Just give an official startup one more time here. This is the 10th Knowledge Seekers Workshop, and we'll have Mayran Kesh and the Knowledge Seekers of the Spaceship Institute. And my name's Rick Crammond, and I'm not sure quite yet what's going to be going on in this workshop, but we are promised that there'll be some new information about the reactors and some other the nanotechnology aspects. And how are you doing there at the Spaceship Institute, Mr. Kesh? Are things coming together, or do you need some more time, or how is it?
Pardon? Sorry about that.
I was just wondering how you're doing there. Do you need some more time?
No, we are already hand washed, face washed, sitting on the table to share the knowledge. Today we start with Ivan, and then we go around the table as usual. I'll give the microphone to Ivan.
Great, thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Well, today the most obvious subject seems to be the what we have been doing the last couple of days, rearranging our formation of plasma reactors, and there were indeed some interesting things happening. Especially my reactor. Well, yeah, the others as well, I have to say. But the first thing, 2 days ago, my reactor stopped. The motor stopped running, and we were kind of uncertain what was happening. If the motor was not functioning, or if the plasma had stopped the motor. And first we were thinking to stop it altogether and dismantle to look what was happening. Then Mr. Keshe said he tried two things. First, to the exhaust, to let the let's say air come in. Then the vacuum it again. In the meantime, I was monitoring I was using the cell phone to monitor the fields around the reactor. And these actions hardly made any difference. So the field, if I applied the magnetic field detector of the cell phone to the body of the reactor, it was around 100 at the bottom, and around 150 in the middle of the reactor, halfway, and around 250 at the top. If I apply the cell phone, probably the magnetic field detector is somewhere in the middle of the phone. So if I put the back of the phone in contact with the body of the reactor, it read something like 350. I say read because I don't know about right now. I haven't checked anything this morning. So at that point, after these actions of emptying and vacuuming, well, emptying rather, using the exhaust and vacuum again, not much happened. Also, the motor did not come back into action. Then yesterday in the morning, Mr. Keshe tried to add some argon, but we are a little bit uncertain because just a little bit later we noticed that the pressure of the argon was too low. So anyway, that also did not make a difference because adding argon, Mr. Keshe said, compresses the fields, and if the fields can be compressed to the center, then they would be away from the motor, and eventually the motor would start up again. And then, as a last resort, Mr. Keshe went to his lab, took some special magnets, applied two fixed magnets around the housing of the motor, just put them there, And then he used 2 other magnets on the housing of the reactor in a way like you would use your hands to start a flywheel or any wheel. And at the same time, while he was doing that, we were all watching the current going through the motor, because although the motor had stopped, we kept some current going. Not too much, not to burn the motor, obviously, but since the motor has this water cooling inside, it can take something, even when not running. And so Mr. Keshe was watching to see if the current going through the motor would go down. And indeed, while he was doing that, first it did not happen. Then with some other magnets, within a few seconds, I would say, the current went down substantially, maybe some 20%. And at that point, we increased the current and the motor started turning again. Then it was turning happily for the rest of the day until last night around 8 o'clock or something. While Mr. Keshe was not around, we kind of had the impression that in the meantime, we had completely rearranged the position of the reactors, brought them close together. They had been like this for a couple of hours. And then we had the impression that the cores are spinning quite fast. It was around 800, 900, some of them. And so we were collectively deciding, well, let's bring down the speed of the cores a little bit. I have to say that my reactor was on the outer circle. So we have the center reactor, then we have 3 that we had removed the table. We had put 3 reactors on the flyboard, on the round circle, and then my reactor was just centimeters outside that circle. And another new one on the other side, the same. The minute we lowered the speed of the cores from 900 to around 600, we saw the current in the motor of my reactor go up from 1.6 amps to 1.8, 1.9, 2, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4. And I said, oh my God, if this goes on a little bit more, then the motor will stop again. And so we decided, let's bring the speed of the cores a little bit up again, but apparently to no avail. What happened is that a few minutes later, the motor stopped again. And that's as far as I can tell you right now. So we concluded that actually what happened was that first of all there is a connection. We established a connection between the cores. Yesterday in the morning, Mr. Keshe had asked us to connect the cores with the nano-coated copper wire. Apparently we didn't do it in exactly the right way, but anyway, we did connect them. And because that would help to connect the fields. And apparently the fields were connected because the reaction was immediate. Not the way we had expected expected it to happen, obviously, but we could watch the result, that was for sure. And so now, well, today we'll have to see what our next move is going to be. That's about it for now. The excitement of the week, Mr. Keshe says. Any questions about that?
Maybe I have a question about the connection of the reactors with the nano-coated wire, you said?
Yes.
How do you do that? How it goes? Can you explain a little bit?
Okay.
How it look like?
So we had some nano-coated copper wire sitting here, and just what is it? 2/10 or 3/10 or whatever, or 4/10 of a millimeter copper wire that we had nano coated in the usual way. And so we took that copper wire and we connected it to the top of the cores of a non-moving part, I should say. So at the rotating valve level at the top of the core, the piece that is not rotating, we just turned the wire around it. Sorry, and then we connected it to the central core. And it should have been at the bottom of the central core, but now we connected it to the top, so that was the mistake that we made. The reason it should go to the bottom is the fields coming out of the top of the reactors in star formation should be absorbed through the bottom of the central core, which is sitting higher. So that was wrong, but nevertheless, apparently the fields were connected, not in the right way though. That's about it. It's so we connected the 3 wires from the 3 star formation reactors to the central core, and then another 2 wires from these 2 reactors, because there were only 2 at the moment, as John was busy rebuilding his, from the outer circle to the inner circle, I will call it.
Okay.
So it was quite straightforward. No special connections. Just slightly turn it around the metal piece. Because Mr. Keshe said these fields can propagate them only through the nano material, not through the copper, mainly.
Yes.
And he also explained this, that it was conceivable to connect the reactors of a star formation with a plasma holding tank in the middle. This plasma holding tank shouldn't be any bigger than let's say a grapefruit, and there should be nano coated in the inside and connected to the reactors by nano coated copper tubes. We would then just trying to figure out if it needed some valves or not, because these valves would not be nano coated. But maybe it doesn't need valves, or then we thought maybe you need magnets. Anyway, that we were not out of that yet. But this way, if the fields could be shared by the different reactors. I think that's about it for now. I'll pass the microphone, unless there's another question regarding what I just brought or told you.
Ivan, so the plasma chamber, so that would be used as a central, so it's the same plasma? Is that what we're looking at?
That's what I understood from what Mr. Keshe explained, yes. That there would be one reserve tank of plasma, which possibly could then be shared, or if a new reactor is added.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't go into that, if it was the idea to balance it or to share it with, if a new reactor is brought in to jumpstart it, something like that. That was my understanding, but we have to go further into that.
How about
maybe you can ask Mr. Keshe later on. Sorry.
Okay, maybe I will, sorry.
All right, let me give the microphone to Marco.
Yeah, hello, good morning. Maybe regarding last question, I can say also that it takes quite a long time sometimes to create plasma. That's why it's good to have a plasma reserve tank of the plasma. And if you need it very quickly, or if you put another reactor into the operation, it's very helpful to have this reserve tank.
Right, you would be draining the tank because you could always fill the tank back up, right?
Yes, yes.
You might call that a plasma transfusion, like they do with blood plasma. You could
There you go.
you would be able to use the reserved blood that you have on hand to jumpstart, like you say, a new reactor coming in, perhaps to initiate it.
Yes,
Interesting idea.
exactly. You
So
can.
it could also be the balance of, or the gravitational magnetic field of the point of where you are right now. So could you not go somewhere else and come back to this specific point with that plasma?
I don't see in this way, right? In this moment, I didn't think deeper or in this direction.
We were sort of
anyway,
discussing that a little bit in terms of, I think, Vince, you were talking about that, and if you have, say, you had this reserve tank of plasma that you have there, and what if you were able to take bits of it out and still keep that plasma going in separate little reactors that you put one on the other side of the world and one on the moon and one in the ocean, and would they still be able to communicate with each other because they'd all be the same plasma, initial plasma, you might say?
Yes, yes. Plasma is always communicating with each other, especially if they are from the same source, and it's there is no any limitation in distance. This communication is, let's say, thousand and thousand billions of kilometers or light years, or however you measure this distance. There is no limitation with this connection.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing this. Go ahead.
So I was just going to ask if there's a way to change the maggrav so that they can interspeak, so to say, between one type and the other, because they would be completely different magravs themselves. Could you attenuate them in some way to be able to communicate with a different maggrav?
Yes, you can, but this is the aim of the reactor. You have plasma in the reactor, and you change the conditions in your reactor.
Right.
And with these conditions, you connect to some other. This reserve tank is only reserve tank.
That would be the dynamic.
It is connected.
Right. No.
But then you have reactors when you change your parameters in your reactor. You're compressing plasma or you're expanding plasma, and in this way you, let's say, you go from
maggrav.
The strength. You're changing the strength of the plasma. You go from matter level to transition level or to principal level of the strength of the plasma, and try to get different results out of this.
I think it's interesting that just a couple of days ago, I think it was, they discovered that the sun has other star. They discovered another star that came from the same baby star system, generating star system that our sun came from. So it's apparently the first time they discovered one that came from the exact same seed factory, essentially. So maybe by studying that sun, we'll see similarities they are probably in communication with each other in some way because they're sisters, brothers, or whatever, depending how you look at it.
We are all in communication. Our sun has, let's say, sister sun or twin star, and also like galaxy or universe has its twin or sister, because everything is the same principle. If you look at the neutron decay into proton and electron, and these are from the same source. Neutron is the source, and you have proton and electron. They are sisters, and they are connected. They're magnetic gravitational field connected. They are together. They are rotating one around to the other, one around the other, and they took position. And you have always this connection. You can find these parallels all over the universe. And I will pass microphone to Mr. Keshe to explain this.
The whole program, the whole process is, as I was explaining some times ago in a talk. As you know, I've referred to this before in a couple of sessions before. As United Nations has done a
Well, sorry, buddy. I pushed a wrong button, and
Hello? Can you hear us?
yeah, sorry. That was my fault. I pushed the wrong button, and everything went bye-bye. So we'll have to sort of try to pick up that that last statement you were bringing out there,
Okay.
Mr. K. It'll take a minute for these for the other people. I have to hang up on some people and just straighten out the line here again. So I had to restart the Skype. Okay, bear with us as we reintegrate everything here. Let me just see.
Hey, Rick, just a GoToMeeting test.
Okay, thank you, and I have to hang up on many people here. Just a minute. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, let's try to regain our composure there. And Mr. Keshe, you were mentioning something about the UN before I so rudely
okay.
cut you off there.
What I was saying, as you know, I explained this before in other talks, that as UN has done a DNA test on 10,000 mothers around from 10,000 different tribes around the earth, and they all have a common denominator mother, the DNA chain connection, which means the whole human race tribe comes from the same mother or the same origin. This is the same with all the planetary system. As even this universe was created from the division of bigger universes, and the universe before the same as a neutron seed for the others. So all the systems, even universes, are internally, when man education and knowledge becomes further, understands that all the systems are interconnected, irrelevant of being a human body or atomic structure or a universal structure. So this is one of the advantages of when you make systems and you try to travel and you try to create things, they all have a common denominator. This common denominator, we'll talk about it very soon, because we are in the process of receiving the material, hopefully, or later on today, how this origin of this material, where it sits and can be used. So, as Marco said, and as they say they have found the sun, which is have the same origin seed as the earth. In fact, even this universe and all the planets on this universe have that common denominator and common link, and this is the link which one uses in further motions and movement and travel and communication systems. As you said, with the reserve tanks, as the knowledge seekers go further, we open up the doors and more knowledge, different ways to do things. So this is nothing new, but you cannot talk about it when you're not there. They're getting there now. And that's, you can use the reserve tank as a source for all your reactors. This is used in a different dimension, strength level.
Excuse me for just a second there, Mr. Keshe. We have a strong background noise happening, and I'm trying to figure out how we can do a little sound check.
Us?
It may be. Yeah, that helped. Whatever that was. Oh, now it's good. We're good now. Okay,
So,
it's really good now. Thank you.
Okay, so this is one of the things which, in these reserve tanks, we create the plasma in the original reactors, and part of the process which Ivan referred to is that we vacuumed the cores, his core, and I explained when we did it, the vacuum pumps, the turbomolecular pumps, only can extract matter from your core, not the plasma. This is a fundamental new understanding for you lot. So when you extract, when you put your cores on a vacuum pump and you vacuum it to go to the next step, or you think you're going to reload, be warned that if you have created plasma, you have not extracted the plasma. Matter vacuum system does not work with the plasma in this condition. And this is how we showed it yesterday, that as Ivan said, we vacuumed it, and then we had to use magnets to move the plasma. Even the vacuum, the standard vacuum system we use for all our reactors, we heard the gases coming out into the matter side. But after nearly 12 hours the following day, you still have the plasma sitting there holding the reactor. So be very, what do you call it, be cautious and be advised. Just because you think you vacuumed, you have not managed to extract plasma. And if you build plasma step by step, you think, oh, it didn't work, I use a different combination. In the first stage you put, let's say, 1 or 2% of the volume in the plasma, and then the next stage you'll come to a point you start your motor and it doesn't work even when you do the vacuum, because you saturated your system with a high level plasma. This is the new learning curve for you lot. Be on your guard. Just because you vacuum your system of matter does not mean you vacuum system of plasma. The reason for reserve tanks is you create a higher strength maggrav plasma in your reserve tank. And then I teach you how to divide it, that you can feed immediately. You receive surges. It happens in space travel. You lose one of your cores by all sorts of problems. You should be able to support immediate reading, and to reload in high speed takes time. But now you use your reserve, and you use fraction of the reserve. And because these tanks come from the original plasma, they can communicate. They interact. Part which I think Ivan mentioned in a passing by, but is absolutely crucial, is that when Ivan, we put the reactor after we restarted it with moving the plasma in the core, and we put it on the floor, more or less immediately we saw reduction in the speed of the other reactors on the floor. So what this means is that the plasma strength is so much that it puts gravitational magnetic field pressure on the other cores, that it slows them down. It's like grabbing them. So this was the first indication that the reactors have created plasma and they are interacting. Because if it was matter, the core from the fields from E1's small core should not affect what do you call it, a metallic spherical about 8 kilo, 7-8 kilo, or the secondary, the others, which are on the same level. But because the field, plasmatic field, gravitational plasmatic field from the core was allowed to spread to come to its own balance, then these forces are absorbed or interact with the other cores, and in the plasma from E1's core, which just restarted, was strong enough. It has forced the other reactors to slow down in the speed, and the slowing speed was quite, what do you call it, visible. It was detectable. And apparently, when I was away yesterday, we have a new situation here in the Institute, I'll explain later on. When they decided collectively to reduce the speed, they again created a condition of the reverse. And they put the plasma of E1's reactor back in its cage. So they forced the motor to stop. So you cannot just reduce the speed and the reactor, which is, let's say, half a meter away, stop for nothing. So the reactors have started interacting. The position is that, as I said to them yesterday, they missed 2 points to fly. The system is ready for lift. The position I've observed, because I know a little bit more than them, I hope. They had the reactors on the table. When we put E1's reactor on the floor and we saw the reduction in the motion of the other reactors, I explained to them, they didn't observe that the top reactor, what we call the principal reactor, start moving. And that the magnetic pressure, which was put on the other cores to slow them down, on the top reactor causes a lift. So I advise them, if they don't want to get the reactor dropped on the floor from top of the table, to bring it down. And so that's why the reactor has come down, for that purpose, for that reason. If the situation is handled the right way, I think the knowledge seekers are ready to observe the first motions and lifts within coming days. The reactors are responding extremely well. And there is a very important point, I think, is a shift in the direction of knowledge seekers becoming responsible for their action. I explained this to them that most of you have been involved in trying to build reactors for past year, 2 years, or past months. You know how difficult it is to build one, even get it set up and set and working. We have been in a good position through the research that now we have 8 reactors, which 7 of them totally belong to the foundation, and one which is John's, which is a porcelain one. So instead of waiting and learning theoretical plasma technology, these guys have their hands on the full operating reactors. And I thought, in me being there all the time telling them what to do, as I explained to them, it's like the man who goes to a place driving himself and learns the way, or the guy who uses GPS. He never learns the way, he just follows the direction on the panel. So as of yesterday, the running of all 8 reactors has been handed over to the knowledge seekers, and I sit as advisor. So they cannot come back to me, or they wait for me to say, okay, now we move to the next step, now we do this. One of these consequences of this new, what do you call it, structure, is that they have to make a mistake collectively, or they have to make decision collectively. How they load, how they want to load, how they want to react, and how they want to connect. And one of these has been yesterday evening when I was that they apparently, from what I see and what I've seen and what I see in response to reactor, they missed a second opportunity to create lift yesterday. They should have stepped up the plasma to open it further. Instead, they reduced the plasma and they confined it into the mother reactor, which is taking position now. It seems that E1's reactor has taken the lead because of its structure. It has a specific structure in it. So it looks like E1's reactor has taken, it's become the control panel for the setup. So as of yesterday, I'm just an observer, and all the decisions of loading and connecting and positioning goes back on the knowledge seekers collectively. This is part of the collective work, and this is what they have to teach to the rest. That decision making on this level has to be, and somebody has to make decisions. I wrote something, somebody wrote me an email. I put on my link yesterday on the forum, leading, and someone said this should be loading. I said we start teaching the leading and setting of the reactors. And as my usual English is not good enough, somebody wrote to me, this is loading and testing. And I said, no, this is leading. That's exactly what I meant. One reactor leads. Now you have to learn the operation of the leading, how in the reactor through the strength of the principal matter you produce in your inner core decides which core leads. Because the mass counts. How much gases you put in. I explained this to the knowledge seekers yesterday. Doesn't matter how much argon or nitrogen you put in your core. This is totally irrelevant because that's matter. From now on, how much hydrogen and how much hydrogen can change into plasma dictates the strength of your reactor and which reactor takes position. And this is a very fundamental change in the whole thing. So you make a leader out of your system, and if you understand how to make a second leader, by experience you learn how you load up your reactors and star formation. You do not need, what do you call it? You can create all sorts of operational control. I explained the same thing regarding this matter to the knowledge seekers in the past week, to open their eyes to the reality of the creation and the work of the universe. Man has not come very far from the time of the Adam, and when he could walk, and then when he saw the donkeys, he chose the animals, and because they had 4 legs, he could go a bit more and carry more. We changed that donkey. If you look to a car, it's still got 4 wheels, 4 legs, and we rotate it. And now we're taking that step further, and we create what we call these generators or motors. Motors are man-made entity, do not exist in the universe. We don't see a motor on the earth or anywhere else to rotate it. So now you have to start learning how to create rotation of your cores without motors, without power supply. And this is done only in the universe. All the universal systems in motion and universal system for travel in the space at the moment uses what we call the magnetic gravitational gradient. So now you're going a step further, you understand how to create the initial plasma. Now you have to start learning about the control of the creation of rotation through magnetic gravitational strength gradient. So once you start leading the reactor rotating, you can literally increase and rotate and create new conditions and new environments in your craft or in your setting to create motion of the plasma, which this is what you need for your space motion and travel. Loading comes the same way. You do not need gas tanks. You can create and absorb enough energy in your reserve tanks by absorbing energy from environment through gradient differential. So now you lead, you find a leader, you set a level at a higher level, and that leader dictates the rest. Then you can create a magnetic wind or magnetic motion for your plasma. This is what I showed yesterday. Yesterday when we had an empty core, I only used a specific, I've designed these systems over past years. We have 8 set of different type of, what do you call it, magnetic setups, which these allows different strength, what do you call it, plasmas to be brought into motion or slowed down or speeded up, that you can come out of this what I call plasma locks. Ivan's reactor is in a plasma lock. And what happens that the plasma interacts with a carbon on the brush of the motor, and the forces of it makes it insulator. It's like what we see with MS. The top layer, carbon changes into diamond structure because of the magnetic gravitational field, the strength of the plasma, and the motor does not receive any contact. So partially is a magnetic field expansion, and partially is the conversion of the graphite because it's a matter. So you understand the whole working as a whole. There are a lot of research papers about the interaction of the plasma and the magnetic, and the graphite brushes. You can go on the internet and read it. Then you understand that's what happens. In a research done in Belgium, we've seen it how a small voltage current across the diamond makes the diamond conductor for microsecond, nanoseconds. So you understand another step in the whole thing. So this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't loading and setting. It was leading and setting. And now we've seen the leader. It's very clear. Ivan's reactor has taken the lead. It does not need to be in the center because you can lead from outside core. You need this kind of leader system with your communication and control, central control. And when you subdivide satellite crafts. So what it means in the future when you have satellite crafts leaving the mother craft, or you're sending probes out, you need your leader to be contact in with both sets. This is how you communicate and you control. This I teach you later on. So it's like once they establish, they understand the hierarchy due to the magnetic field strength pressure. You got to understand the design of the reactor of Ivan. It was deliberately designed to have a mass ratio, or what do you call it, magnetic gravitational ratio superiority. Because it's fully coated with nanomaterial, and it has only a nano-coated disc in the center. So the whole volume of the core is the what do you call it? Is your plasma center, where the other reactors are all confined inside each other, or they have a sphere inside the sphere. This was originally designed to do this, and it's shown to be effective. And that's why in past 2-3 days, Ivan said, I want to open it. I said, leave it. It's the magnetic field pressure. We got to see, and I've shown it, it is there. So from the test this week, please, just because you think you evacuated your system, you don't have a plasma. If you don't understand this principle, measure the magnetic field in your core. If it's near the same in the whole core and in the environment, then you don't have a plasma. But if you see gradients in your plasma, it means in your reactor core, magnetic gravitational field, it means you have a plasma. The game has changed. If you, by accident, manage to suddenly use, what do you call it, molecular pumps to evacuate your system, you disturb and you catch part of this plasma to go out into your tank, and this energy, as you saw, it could affect the other reactors when we start moving. This energy will be released into electronics of your systems, your thermomolecular pumps, your electronic system around you, and it literally damages. We've seen this result several times in our tests in past years. So even when you are evacuating or emptying your tanks, thinking you're taking gases out, always open into exhaust first, before even you start using your rough pump. Because if the evacuation is rapid, any surplus plasma which might be loose or in layers trapped will not damage your systems. Or you'll find out your seals don't work anymore. You say you have a leak, you can't create vacuum, because plasma has a characteristics because of the rubber to change lattice structure of the rubber, and then you find out your rubber becomes like a chewing gum and it doesn't hold. You can go and read about the effect of this on lattice structure of the rubber by a paper published as a research paper by the head of Iranian Space University. He's done his research on this. It's very interesting if you want to understand the effect of the plasma. I can release his name and his paper. Just go on the internet, you find his name and his research paper. Then you know how you get affected. The other thing, what do you call it? I pass on to Marco. Sorry, I had to clear this that you understand before we leave it out.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Kesh. I was wondering about that myself, about the loading versus leading issue.
I got a quick question, if that's possible.
Yes.
Does that mean when you discharge your reactor into your discharge cylinder, the plasma is not extinguished? That's one thing. And do you have this tank between your vacuum pump and the reactors, or you have separate connection between the reactors?
Do you mean reserve tank for plasma or tank for exhaust tank for gases and?
Yeah, exhaust tank for gases. Like I have a tank which I vacuum with a turbomolecular pump, and from that tank I can vacuum the reactor. So the first place where the plasma is gonna go is a big stainless steel cylinder, not in the turbomolecular pump, but is it gonna be exhausted in that cylinder, or still is gonna go into the turbomolecular pump?
First, it will go to your cylinder, to your intermediate cylinder, and you better leave it there. Let's say few minutes or whatever, so that this energy is absorbed by the container, by the material of your reserve tank, of your vacuum tank. You don't put it immediately through turbomolecular pump. Well, we have also another connection, like an exhaust. Exhaust is connected to our distribution system directly outside. We have another pump in between, and this is connected to atmospheric air. And we usually first open exhaust valve, so that we get atmospheric pressure to our system or to our pipes. Then we close the exhaust valve, and then we vacuum it to the reserve vacuum cylinder. We have also filters before exhaust tank. Before this exhaust pump, there is a filter which has carbon inside. And this carbon, when absorbs energy from the plasma, it converts also to diamond structure. So anyway, you have to be very careful when you are exhausting plasma. You will not exhaust all the plasma, you will just exhaust the bits of it, but it's enough to destroy your vacuum pump. maybe here I've got a tip from Ivan. The exhaust pump is aquarium pump in the special container. We will try to send you a picture of it, how the configuration is done. Is this enough for you, Ludmila?
Yeah, okay, thank you. I hope when I see the picture, I will try to figure it out.
Yeah, it's much easier with pictures.
Yeah, I just cannot imagine that how that's gonna work. But thank you very much.
Okay. Maybe some other things that happened in last week. We've got some accidents also here. The reactor that I'm taking care of had a failure during the weekend. On Monday, when we came back to the institute, there was surprise. The reactor that I'm loading and taking care of was laying down on the floor, and the legs were off. Bearings were all over the place, and bolts, and it was smashed. So we tried to figure out what happened. So we went to see video recordings from the lab. Unfortunately, also video recordings were not stored on the disk storage. So there was no possibility to find out what exactly happened. There are different possibilities. Legs of the reactor were not optimal, and maybe because of the vibration, one of the legs was broken, and the reactor fall down on its side, and it was damaged at this fall. There is another possibility that because of the plasma reaction, reactor was moved from its position. It leaned and it fall down to the ground, and at that fall, it was damaged, and we observed quite a lot of changing of the speed rotation in that reactor. Speed went down and then up again, and it happened also that speed went up to very high speed, and Mr. Cash brought it down during the weekend 2 times. Oh, it was completely stopped. The same as Ivan reactor. It was completely stopped, actually. Not just slowed down, but completely stopped. And then Mr. Cash increased the speed 2 times, so it went up, then it stopped again, and then this accident happened. It fell down and it was damaged. So we had plasma condition also in that reactor, so it could be this reaction between plasmas that caused this accident. So we have to repair the reactor. We put it onto the
In a
operation
circle
table
around it.
on the Monday, and we change legs, we change bearings, and now it's very stable. Legs are very stable. Bearing is very powerful, and now it was also balanced. Yes. Thanks to Ivan, he put counterweight on its side, so now it rotates much more smoothly than before. Cooling system was added to the motor, and this also helps. Yeah. So maybe I can describe something also about how to find out if you have plasma inside your reactor or not. We are using magnetic field detector, and you use your probe and you go near to your reactor. First of all, you have to measure ambient magnetic field strength, and then you go to your reactor and measure fields at the top, at the middle, and at the bottom of the reactor. And if you observe some differences in field strength, you can find out that on one side, let's say on the bottom or on the top of the reactor, you have higher field strength, and in such a way you can find out where is your exit and where is your entry and your exit of your fields from the reactor, where is your south and north pole. In the south pole you have a lower field strength, and in the north you have like in the exit you have a higher field strength. This is because fields are absorbed from the south, and some fields are also inside the plasma are added to this field flow, and you get higher field strength on the exits of on the north pole of the reactor. So that's from my side. If anybody have any question.
I have a question. Could it be that the matter of the reactor get magnetized by it? So even when you dismantle the core and get it together again, that when you check it with a compass or something, that the reactor still have its south and north side.
Did you check this before you started the reactor also? What
Yes,
was the condition before?
But I had I did some tests already months ago. I had something we didn't know what. It's in one of the videos on YouTube, and maybe the stainless steel was magnetized by it. I don't know.
Usually the stainless steel, the way that they make this house sphere, they pressure it, and with this pressure they disturb crystal structure in the metal, in the stainless steel, and you get slightly magneticized stainless steel. So that's why I asked if you measured that before you started your test.
At first, when I used the core the first time, I didn't check it with the compass, but it's welded also. Maybe there are several changes also in the structure of the matter of the metal. I don't know. It's strange.
Where did you notice this anesthetized at the welding point or in the material of the spheres?
Well, when I when I hold the compass on, let's say, a distance of 20-25 centimeter of the reactor. Now it's still spinning. It's the fourth day it's spinning. The south, no, I think that's this south side of the needle, yeah. So points at the reactor when on the top. When I go downwards beneath the reactor, the needle turns around 180 degrees, and the north side points the reactor. And
I think most probably you have plasma inside. This is not from your stainless steel, from your chamber. This is from yes, and one thing also, you have to be careful when you are close to your motor, because in your motor you have magnets. This can impact on your compass also.
Yeah. I have several things to check. I have a fluorescent light with it. I have my coil with the scope on it to check if there is some flux. But yeah, right now it's only indicatable with the compass.
Most
explain to him something. When he uses the fluorescent tube, if the gases are not set, they will not come up. Because you do not a plasma, you do a metal. That's why you in the lab, you got to wait.
Mr. Cash was explaining here, if you have gases inside your reactor, if you have gas layering, these gases are at a certain pressure that they will not allow to get plasma out. So you will have very difficult some interaction with your gas tube of the light to have some indication. We observed this interaction in lab with lamps that are on our ceiling, but this is in a way when plasma somehow gets the way to escape out of to have some gap through this gases.
Let me explain the difference. You might understand. If you got a Tesla system, a setup, you'll find out your fluorescent tube does not come on its own if you hold it in the air, usually. you have to touch one end of the tube with the sphere, that you make the connection and then the tube comes on. This is something which a lot of you most probably have never noticed, because we did the test with Professor Mile in the center in Ninov about a couple of years ago when he was our guest. The fluorescent tube on its own usually doesn't come on till you touch one of the ends of the fluorescent tube to one of the spheres of the Tesla unit, and then the light comes on. In this process, when you touch, you use the electron energy. You establish the electron energy in the system. With a plasma, it's totally different. It's the plasma which has to interact with the plasma in the tube. So in the cases of what we see in the lab, we have no connection with the electrical system or with the bulbs on the top, except through the electrical connections in the building. So in so many ways, the plasma from our system partially interacts through the electrical connection, because they're all connected to the motors. And that's why we wait for a delay. It doesn't happen the minute we switch the light off. We wait a couple of minutes. Or sometimes when it happens directly, you see the fluorescent tube coming on, is when the plasma interaction is about the same. We have start seeing these, even the interaction of these plasmas you create and you look in your system, goes beyond the boundary of the building at the moment in the Sonsano. I've seen, and even my wife a couple of days ago noticed, you see changes in the structure of the cloud over the area you work. Because you are, again, matter connected. You think everything has to be, and everything around you is matter connected, where outside there is a lot of mixture of plasmas and all sorts. Start looking in beyond the dimension of focus of your reactor. If you create plasma, don't look for interaction immediately around it. What do you get? The interaction of the magnetic field with plasma of a star goes billions of kilometers because it's plasmatic. And sometimes when there is a matter interaction and it reduces enough to matter, then you see it. So go one step further and don't just look what's happening in your plasma. Position of your motor sometimes can affect. We've done this now in all the reactors. In one of the reactors, we have a possibility of running the reactor from 2 motors on the top and a motor at the bottom. And we were running the reactor from the motor on the top, and now we made everything motor from the bottom, that all the reactors work in the same sequence. So in so many ways, your motor and the rotational magnets in your motor should not have such much say in the whole thing, but you got to realize something which is different between us here in the institute and you outside, is you have nothing to see and to measure except what you can guess and see till I teach you how you can use your reactors. Where in the institute, like yesterday, twice immediately the interaction of the magnetic gravitational field is observed by other 6-7 reactors on the floor. So this is one advantage you have, which we don't have. And I know I think the Chinese scientists and community are getting together to put their reactors together, which most probably this will be the first time outside here that there will be 2 or 3 reactors. If you can organize to meet somewhere, if you are near each other, and run your reactors collectively, you will learn much faster. I try, so at the moment is on the shoulder of Marek to get the lines established that you will see it. What we saw yesterday, we started one reactor, immediately we saw other reactors speeding down or coming to a halt, which means we have created a plasmatic interaction. There is no connection between these systems. So when you see differential between the one pole to the other, and it is substantial, you got to understand you have reached some sort of plasma. What we are doing here now is that not from today we are loading not only with what do you call it, with hydrogen and nano layering, because I think they've learned enough with it. Now we are going into the nano layering and multi-layering of gases, as we've seen with Ivan's system. So in so many ways, if they respond, the two reactors which have slowed down very rapidly and they've shown performance is Marcos, which is a stainless steel outside, and we have deliberately put a center nano beam inside it as a what do you call it, as a core, center core. We've seen the fluctuation in plasma, which means we create not only plasma in the center, but because this center core beam is in the center, it holds on to the plasma because it's nano-coated. It's got its own gravitational magnetic field layers. And we have seen the same process with Ivan's, where we multi-core, what do you call it? We have a multi-layering and a nano-coating. You got to understand the process of nano-coating and layering. What happens is that at the boundary interface of the what we use like argon and the gravitational magnetic field of nano layers, there is a much faster release of what you call extreme ultraviolet, which this can penetrate through because it's a slightly higher. It's actually on the X-ray level. It penetrates through the nitrogen and excites nitrogen, and nitrogen itself can be used in conjunction with helium to become the supply source of the hydrogen and plasma for the system. So your plasma, whatever you lose as energy into the surrounding area, the nano layer interface with argon in releasing hydrogen, in releasing extreme ultraviolet, just what they call a soft X-ray, triggers the condition for the helium and nitrogen to release hydrogen in a level of the field, not matter, that becomes part of the supply for your center core. That's why you see these cores being so powerful, because they start feeding themselves. This process happens in the upper layer of the atmosphere on Earth, where the energy packages I was explaining yesterday to the knowledge seekers, is that the conversion nitrogen is created in the upper layers, is in the book number 4. I've explained the process. That leads to production of the hydrogen and the rest of it, which comes on the atomic level. In so many ways, it happens the same thing in your lungs. It's the same process. So we have replicated the nano layer, which enforces the feeding and constant supply of the hydrogen to the center core, to the center of the core itself. So you see much more powerful performances from these, and so this is why you got to see if your core is a nano layer coated, and if it is like the way we have with the energy unit reactor, we have placed a nano coat center, which means the nano coating in the center, because of its gravitational magnetic field layering, will hold on to the plasma, and then the plasma expands. That was the reason why Marcos reactor came to a halt on Sunday. I restarted it again and it came to a halt because the plasma inside is very, very powerful. The process you got to understand, not just because you do something. Try to if you're working with a single reactor, try to see how much you can compress with the heavier gases your what do you call it, your plasma. Don't evacuate it, compress it. If you compress it, then you see the strength of your system, but then you have to open it up. You can extract material very simply by playing with your valves and double valves. What I what I recommend, what we are doing here, if you look closely on top of every reactor, Now we put a specific valve before we go to the valve of the feeding, which means we literally hold the plasma in the core. Don't leave a valve 2 meters, 3 meters away. Put an extra valve on top of your reactor, you confine your plasma, you reach the plasma condition much faster. I'll pass it on to Marco. No, Marek.
Any questions?
Yeah, here it again. I have two taps on the top and the bottom. There's a tap on the bottom and on the top to assure to be sure of the vacuum also to avoid leaks on the pipes. And I thought tonight to add some argon to compress inside, and I have some helium also, but I thought to use regular air instead of nitrogen, because there is a lot of nitrogen in regular air. That's the only thing I have. I don't have a bottle of nitrogen. Do you think that's a good idea or not?
It's
I
a little
did it
coincidence.
before. I did it before with regular air to test the reactor, but now it's running for 4 days, and yeah, I just wanted to try also with some argon, but I don't know if it's a good idea to use the air as a gas, actually.
Actually, we did yesterday inadvertently because we had some problems with argon reduction valve at the gas supply, the gas tank, and once Ivan's reactor was open to exhaust, so actually connected to atmosphere. So yes, the air came into Ivan's reactor at one time, and we then evacuated it again. So there was something like this happening already. So I think we try to use argon usually, not the pure air, but
the way I understand it
because you have also some oxygen
right.
in air.
Isn't
you have
it-
also nitrogen, it's true.
Isn't the oxygen is the problem with the EUV? It tends to block EUV, while nitrogen will allow the EUV to travel through, and argon would allow the EUV. How about
Yes,
that as an idea?
Maybe at this point I'm not able to make conclusions from this. So we usually
It's known, for example, that the EUV will only travel a few nanometers in atmospheric air, but it's able to travel through nitrogen fairly easily for some strange reason.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it can be because the structure of oxygen is then changed to how they call it O3 ozone. So I would prefer using argon, as Marco said. But we can make some experiments and see what happens. I pass the microphone to John. He wants to say something.
What I wanted to say is that, in fact, if you look at the Earth, why don't we receive EUV when we go outside? That's because there's all the high energy radiations coming in the atmosphere is that energy is blocked, and you have in the high atmosphere production of ozone from the oxygen, and that is in fact what is blocking the ultraviolet, and the problem can be seen when there is no more ozone in the atmosphere. The level of UV goes up. So that's that shows that in fact oxygen is the blocking factor for the UV in the atmosphere. So that might be a problem in the reactor. I cannot say what's happening exactly, but in my understanding, I see it as a factor that would, unless you have a very high level of EUV produced, but when you start, what is done is starting with a very low level of radiation. Then when you start to have something going on, the level of EUV will increase. But if you have something that absorbs the EUV, that might stop the reaction. So unless your plasma is already there, if you have to build up your plasma and having some oxygen, that might be a source of a problem.
It seems like the EUV, if it's generated close to the walls of the reactor, would have to move. It would have to move the distance at least to the center of the reactor, where the hydrogen would get ionized and disassociated and then ionized. So it would have to move that couple of centimeters, say, from the walls or close to it to the center. It seems like. So that's a long distance for an EUV ray if it's got oxygen around in the environment. But it's not a long distance.
If you have some helium will be near the center, near the hydrogen. If there's still some, if you haven't built up your plasma, oxygen would be outside of that. Will you first have nitrogen, then oxygen, because of the position? Oxygen is heavier than nitrogen. So what would come outside of that those layers would not interfere directly with what is happening inside with the helium and the nitrogen. So on those interfaces between the interface between hydrogen and helium, and the interface between helium and nitrogen, you would still have some EUV produced. So it's you have to see that the production of and the interference between nitrogen and argon will have disappeared because you have that oxygen being between the two. So the oxygen will not block everything. It will, but you need the other layers that would be inside the position of the oxygen.
Okay.
It is always better to use inert gases because inert gases are transparent completely to EUV.
Okay, and what about the amount of argon, for example?
Sorry, I'm just gonna come in for just to explain one simple thing. I think you're still in your schizophrenic condition. You've lost the connection. The nano layers, you're not your gases on the layer does not interact with matter. It interacts with the magnetic fields which are trapped between or is in between the nano layers and the nano layer itself and the nano layers. So it's not that your gases interact with the surface of the nano coating that it releases the soft X-ray level as a plasma. It's the interaction with the magnetic field which is trapped between these layers. It's a fundamental difference. It's not the rubbing of matter against each other which releases the EUV packages of energy. Is the interaction of the plasma of the matter with the matter plasma which is inside the different layers. This is a very, very big difference. And this is a fundamental difference. You still think that the gases, because of the rotation rubbing against the nano layer, will release the UV. No, it's the magnetic field which is trapped. That's why the nano layer is black. Because it absorbs, at the same time absorbing is hold on to these different fields, but there are dynamic fields going through. We showed the structure in the lab last week, which I think John took a video of it, of different plastic circles. It's on the Facebook. Is the fields which is flowing between these in its interaction with the gas which causes the release. Is a magnetic friction, is not a matter friction. And it's a huge, huge fundamental difference between the two. It's very much the same as the rubbing of the gravitational magnetic field of the Earth. Let me read what air has been added in place of N. Yeah, this is dangerous. Yeah, this is dangerous. You don't add air into your system. Do not do this. You're playing with two things. First of all, the air you introduce carries moisture. And we know this for a fact because then you will see rust on your cores. And then if you have a nano-coated material, the moisture will activate the NaOH system, and then you find out you get all sorts of corrosions in your valves and in your cores and in your pumps. It's one of the fatal mistakes. I have made it, so I can tell you first time.
Would not the air... Excuse me, would not the air also interact with the hydrogen, so the oxygen might mix with the hydrogen and produce the explosive mixture as well, possibly?
Yeah, but that's one of the things is possibility, but you're working in vacuum, which is very rare.
Except when the air leaks in.
Yeah. But one of the things you will notice, you reignite the caustic chain. If you have any caustic left between your layers or on the surface of your material, and then you find out that this will go up in your pipes and into your vacuum system. One of the things you don't do if you want to add air, consider what is in the air. It's 65% nitrogen, but there is a moisture in there. This is one of the reasons, even in your vacuum tanks, empty your vacuum tanks every now and then, open the exhaust valve underneath of it and empty it and see what comes out and see if there is anything in there, because then these things can go back into your system if you have some sort of failure. That's we exhausted the tank, but we always follow it with a vacuum suction. We don't leave it. and that is and even that vacuum suction goes through a pump, which means there is no air can go back into the system. We built the system more or less airtight. We have no airflow in the system. Even the exhaust goes that way. So just be careful. It's a good experience, but it's a very costly experience. I opened one of the valves a few days ago, and I showed the caustic process at the bottom of the where the valve sits, connects to the core. We still see it. So the process, just because you dried your nano layer without washing it, or even when you wash it in a what do you call it, pure water, it does not stop. And if you introduce air or moisture into your system, then you're sitting for a crisis in the long term. I'll pass it on to John.
Okay, then insights of what happened with air. So I hope this should have clarified the question. Do you still have any more?
Yeah, John. What about the amount of argon? When I want to add some argon, I thought to add, well, you know, with the double valves and the meter pipe and things. I thought to add 2 amounts of argon. Do you think it's enough?
What we have been using as a mixture, we have been using hydrogen, 2 quantity, 2 measures of hydrogen. We have been using helium, 4 measures. We have been using nitrogen, 2 measures. And we've been using argon, 8 measures. So it's a thick layer of hydrogen that will surround the whole of the other gas. So to keep the other gas centered and to have a big layer of argon, whether it is in the reactors with coating or without coating. Don't forget that your reactors are rotating, and that the different gas will just make layers depending on the mass, the atomic mass of each gas used. So you have in the center hydrogen, then around the hydrogen you have helium, or around the nitrogen, around the helium you have nitrogen, and around nitrogen you have argon. The gas are introduced because, for example, in my reactor, the gas are introduced from the side. So the first gas will be hydrogen, then you'll continue with helium, then nitrogen, then argon. That's because the gas are introduced sideways. In the reactor, which has been Marco's reactor for working now, there is a pin going down, and the gas are introduced at different levels. So the first time that reactor has been filled up in the other way, because there is some gas that goes directly into the middle of the reactor. So in this case, will the different layers to be so the mix, there's no mix of the gas. When we introduce the gas, the layers are done in the way they should naturally come, which is, in fact, yes, don't forget that your reactor is turning at a certain speed, which is we've been using the speeds around 500 to 800, or we were yesterday at one moment we were around 800. This is only to create the gas layering, and that will act also on the pressurization, and you need some turbulence in the gas to create that pressure expansion at the layering of at the interface between each gas to produce the EUV. That has to be understood because in some case when you have some nano layers on the surface of your cores, so the inner interface of your outer core or whatever you have inside, if you have some nanomaterial, the reaction is different because hydrogen is enough to start a plasma. If you don't have some nanomaterial on the surface of your core, on the inner side of your core, you need the gas layering to have the separation of the plasma that will build up in the center, and that's some important aspect. And what did I wanted to say also? Yes, I'll talk a little about my reactor. It has been put out because, in fact, having no nanomaterial anyway in the system, we could not see any build-up of plasma inside because measuring the fields was not possible. Well, we couldn't see a very a very visible way to see any fields coming from inside the sphere. In fact, at one moment it was even very strange because the fields, the surrounding fields, were about at 40 or 50 microtesla, and near the reactor it was sometimes near the ceramic it was half of it. So it was some way strange, but there was not a clear indication of any plasma inside. So the transformation I'm doing now on my reactor is to introduce a coated pin in the center of the reactor. So I'll have some nanomaterial inside at the center of my reactor. But while trying to open the system, I had a small crack and I had to change the entry of my system and be careful not to put some dust. And I've been using some diamond tool to grind the material, but even the diamond tool are just about out of use now, but because the stuff I'm using is very hard. So now it's ready to be put together. I'll be preparing today the center pin with the nano material. I'll be using some copper foil prepared some time ago, and I'll be gluing that on the threaded rod that will be positioned in the center. So there'll be some pictures of what I'm doing, certainly in the coming days. And well, this should allow the plasma to be kept centered near the nanomaterial and in the center. So if there is some plasma happening, that will be done with the nanomaterial being there. One other reason why the plasma might not build correctly at the beginning was because I have some, how can I say, the two halves of my reactor are different. One half, there is just about nothing allowing, giving the possibility to the gas to have some turbulence. On the other side, I have made with the clay, I've added a kind of propeller inside on the edge, on the inner side of the core. I have built a kind of propeller that I think you might have already seen in some pictures that have been released, and that could create too much turbulence. So adding the pin in the middle with some nanomaterial would allow the build-up of the plasma in a way that it will be kept centered, and the turbulence might, well, we'll still have to see what happens with this construction and see if the fields are correct. So to remind, I think you might have seen that we've been measuring the fields using our cell phones. So some kind of cell phones have the possibilities to have, because they are built with magnetometer, and you have also an accelerometer, and Marek has given us the possibility to see that the fields were there, because he wanted to add, he added an application on his cell phone, and because of the presence of the magnetometer in the cell phone, and it's a very nice application. Well, there are a couple of applications, one which is in fact a visualization of the field as an arrow moving when you move your cell phone. So it's very helpful for intuitively understand the position of the fields. So that's a way that we've been using now in the last few days, because it helped us a lot. But we have to be careful with that magnetometer, because the magnetometer can saturate, and we have to turn if ever the magnetometer saturates, because it's in some at some moment it can be completely blocked. We see the arrow being in one position. We have to turn around the cell phone and make when you hold it in your hand, you make a tour with your hand and the cell phone in your hand, and that will unblock the magnetometer. We confuse the phone.
Hey,
Just
John, can you give us the name of the application that you use with the cell phone? I know there's a couple of different ones with the magnetics. I was wondering what you were experimenting with there. Do you know what the name is?
Okay, it's magnetometer.
Well, that's pretty straightforward.
Magnet meter.
Magnet meter or magnetometer?
Magnetometer. It was on Facebook.
Right.
On our Facebook. There is
You
a
can go
Facebook.
to the Spaceship Institute Facebook and get the link there for it, right? Great.
So,
there's
just a quick question. What kind of range of magnetic fields you're looking after?
Well, we have seen magnetic fields around. Some when it was near my reactor, we were down to at one moment 18, 20, and the highest was with Ivan's reactor that was nearly at 400 at some moment in some places. So it's
That's in
macro
Gauss or
Tesla. The unit is in macro Tesla.
macro Tesla? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
So that's
John?
the range we have seen for the moment.
John, I have another question. You said you have too much turbulence with the propeller. You showed it in a few workshops, in another workshop, and you recommended to create a skirt with the copper nano-layered copper foil. What I did, also to cover the seam of the two core halves. Is this still a good idea to use only the skirt for to create turbulence?
Well, you need the skirt might be efficient and enough to have some turbulence. I think that in my case, because the sphere is about how much? It's about 15 centimeter in the diameter of my sphere, and the thickness of those propeller on the one side only is about 8 millimeter. It might be too much. In the new reactor I've been making, instead of making a propeller like that, I made a spiraling groove, because in the work with ceramic it was much easier to do it that way, and the depth is much less also. So when I'll have time, I might try that one also, but it might be easier to use that other system. I'll have to see what's happening for the rest, and for the moment, well, I'm making. I'm using only a center pin. The sphere I've been making, I had prepared also to have a center core, but it would have been more problematic at different level because it was more, let's say, fiddling to have it correctly positioned. So we went on with the one core, but now adding a pin will already have another effect with the plasma building up. So I hope I've answered your question and gave some insight of that aspect.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? Yes, there's a good thing, Gert. Your live stream of your system is something that is positive for encouraging everyone to go forward.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Well, it's very positive, and we encourage you to continue because it will encourage others with your live stream and with your reactor.
Yeah, I try to help other people to make the system and share the experience and the errors also.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting. Also for me.
Well, each of us, we have learned of your experiments also. So putting all together allows to understand at different levels what each of us we are having as problem and positive and understanding also.
Well, I have another issue. I'm using also the IQ SRH coupling, the rotative
Yes.
coupling. Yeah,
Yes.
I have two now. I used one to I took from the one the cap the push in cap off and glued a Vicon coupling on it.
Yes,
so,
we've seen that.
Yeah, so I have only one O-ring inside instead of two. But I saw they changed the concept of the coupling and the cap. The O-ring is now with the new couplings is the O-ring in the wall of the cap instead of the bottom. That's better, but I have the experience when I use the coupling upside down, so at the bottom of the core. I always have a problem after a few hours that it grips, and yeah, I have to disconnect the pipe because it wants to spin with it. Do you have some problems with the coupling spinning?
If you have the O-ring, just put some vacuum gel on it. It'll solve that problem.
I've done that. I have pictures of it on
Sorry,
Facebook.
John. Sorry. If you have the O-ring on it, the new ones have an O-ring inside when you open it, because we looked at it ourselves, because they told me what you've done. A way to solve that problem could be possibly use some vacuum gel on that O-ring. If you can get the O-ring, because here, and you still get leakage. Or
I don't
spinning.
have leakage. I don't have leakage, but
you get blocking.
The blocks.
Yeah, but you got to take the. Did you take the O-ring out totally, or just you put what do you call silicone on the O-ring from outside? What do you see?
No, the O-rings are still inside, and I added on the two O-rings some high vacuum grease.
Yeah.
And that's all.
You just need to use gel. If you can get hold of that ring to bring it out, because one of the Italian guys did it for us summertime. He showed me how it's done. It's very, I don't know how he did it, but we bought especially O-rings to replace these. Now we got them in stock. But the way to do it that they do not literally freeze or lock is that you got to take the O-ring out, or take that O-ring out if it's damaged, put gel on the new O-ring and put it back in. we solve the problem that way.
Are they Teflon O-rings? The new ones?
Yeah, you can buy them. You can buy them in the market because they had to go out and find it. So I have a few pieces in the stock. But when you take the O-ring, which is already in there, by the time you get it out, it's all in shreds. It's cut and all sorts. So if you can take that out and put gel on the new O-ring and put it back in its place, you'll find you might solve the problem partially.
Yeah, the originals are neoprene, I think. And the ones you mean, the new ones, you mean as Teflon, or not?
Doesn't matter. You can buy them anyway, different qualities. But you have to take that O-ring out, which is original one, and put silicone on the new one and put it back in its place. Because by the time you get that ring out, it's totally in pieces. We've done it. Actually, the engineer who was with us summertime, he did it. He showed me how you can do. You can repair these valves totally. These valves, unless there is a problem when you go with a very high speed, there is like a ball bearing type thing in it, and that it opens a big gap or a big circle, and the two parts detaches. We have that. We've been in that condition, and the top half just comes in your hand, and the bottom half is like a volcanic eruption hole in there. So I've studied the performance of these valves for nearly 7-8 years, and you can repair them very easily, and you can change parts in to fit your demand. But when you do, always with it, there is another O-ring internally in the bottom half when you open it. They need to be, once you take it out, don't put it back in again, because it's totally gone. Then you find out leakage, or you find stoppage in rotation. You got to put a good amount of silicone gel on it, and then replace it. And then you find
the high vacuum grease is not good.
No, high vacuum, you don't need the grease. You need the gel.
Okay.
The grease doesn't. You need the gel to do the job. Grease does a different job than the gel. The high vacuum is the vacuum you use for your, what do you call it, the rubber valves when you connect different part of the pipes of the vacuum system together.
So I think I have some grease. Is this the same grease they use for taps, kitchen taps?
No. Vacuum gel is different. It comes like in a toothpaste usually.
Yeah.
You squeeze it out, but the way to apply this vacuum gel is that you usually wear rubber gloves, like surgical gloves. You put the gel on the glove and you rub it between your fingers quite a bit, that you literally soften it, don't liquid, but it softens, and then you take the vacuum O-rings which you put as interconnection on your fingers, and you rub them very gently all over. You don't put a blob on the system. You put on your finger that it becomes a film, and then you apply it very softly on the O-ring. You don't leave. You should not see anything at all, any big lumps of gel on the O-ring, because if you don't do, then this gets pulled into your vacuum pump, and then you have all sorts of problems with your filters. So this is the way to use the gel. You put it on the gloves, you rub it for a few seconds, that it becomes like a film, and then you take your rubber O-ring or whatever you have your O-rings, and then you rub it very, very gently all the way around, that it stays as a film, not as a lump. Then you find you don't damage your vacuum pumps. Something which will happen now, the way the reactor setting is set in the lab, is that I've asked what do you call it, if we can, for the first time from this week or so, with the telephone facility which we receive now and the system which we have as a system which is very accurate, we start not only mapping the fields in the reactor, but we start three-dimensional mapping of the whole magnetic gravitational field of the environment of the lab in the vicinity of the reactors to understand the interaction between the reactors, which field is going which direction when we change something. So for the first time, we should be able to do like a three-dimensional gravitational magnetic map of the environment of the testing area of the lab. This will give us a very deeper insight of the performance of the reactors and how they do it and how they interact. So this will be, what do you call it? This will be another breakthrough for us to understand which reactor is behaving in respect to the other reactor and its environment. We have chosen the central, more like position. We are about a meter and a half, 2 meters away from the walls, so we don't have an interaction. And then mainly we have a stainless steel tables, which is non-magnetic environment. So we have the opportunity to study the environment of the whole lab magnetically, gravitationally. This is important because when you locate these reactors in a craft, you have to know which part of the reactor, which part of the craft is to avoid, or what material you can start making in each section. The next step now is production of material through the plasma, interaction of the plasma of the fields. This will come up within the next few weeks, and then knowledge seekers will show you how it's done. There is a concept which I'll open this door to all the people who have the reactors running around the world, is that there is a way, and it's done in the space very naturally, that we can connect all your reactors to the Foundation Center reactor. This will take time. The knowledge seekers have to understand what they are doing, and in time we will be able to send packages of like spheres of copper balls, which contain part of the plasma of the mother core. Which means when you add this core, this plasma to your cores, where you have a stable core, you're running efficient cores, because the two come from the same source, your reactors will connect up with our reactor in the center. This is part of the development, which I will teach you soon. But once you manage to run enough reactors around the world, doesn't matter where you are. Can you switch off your mobile, your
microphone? Sorry, my Skype killed down. So,
yeah. So what it is, that it means wherever you are, you will connect with us through the common magnetic field environment of the same material. This is what we are doing in the GANS state with the non-wiring brain, which is on the table and upstairs in the what do you call it, lecture room, and the reactor center in the central core in the lab. So in the coming future, we will send you materials which you can connect with us directly and test with us. So if we change something here, you will see the change in your reactors. This is a zero-time communication system which will be established, and will teach you how to use it. So in the coming weeks, if you can understand the performance of your reactors, by having one reactor, you can be part of the full generation of the reactors around the world. This actually will be helped very soon. We will announce it with the accident in Fukushima. The Fukushima accident has created a fantastic opportunity for the plasma technologists. So in due course, maybe by the time we release the Fukushima paper, we'll add this to it. The people in TEPCO and the Japanese government have not realized that they have become one of the most powerful energy producing countries in the world through this accident. I'll explain this in detail, and it's in the paper partially referred to. So in the coming time, we all be connected through one central position because the material will come from one center core. This is how you will communicate in deep space. There is something which we have the luxury of being here, is that for the formation we need 4 or 7 reactors. But with the luxury of having different cores available, now we have 8 reactors. So we have 1 reactor on a standby if somebody fails out or falls out. This reactor is the original reactor which Jorge and Yukoko started. It's a dummy reactor, and we took it out deliberately because it was releasing fields whenever it felt like it. It was there to play this game, but it does it very effectively. So it changes polarity and it directs fields outside the sphere of the system, because the inner core was made to be loose, and the core itself is loose. So whenever there is a magnetic pressure, when we take the Jorge system out, the pressure now stays within the sphere of the central core, and it doesn't get released outside. It was like a window opening, allowing the cat to escape. So now that reactor is on the standby and it's been taken out, and what we did to be able to take Jorge's system out, we used the harder, we have a full sphere and a half a sphere steel reactor which was built by the foundation some years ago with the help of John and Marek. In past 2-3 days they managed to build a full assembly for it. It's a perfect, it's a beautiful system, and the base material you'll see is different than any other reactors we have in the center, because the base material came with Armand from America. So we have a very nice, transparent, very effective system. It's one of the best systems we have on a perfection. So now we have 8, and sooner or later we have 10 or 12 reactors added to it. The center configuration does not change, it will stay the same. There are a couple of points which we need to address. There's been a situation regarding the why we use nano wires from reactors to the center core. The reason for this is plasma through the gravitational magnetic field layers of the nano layers on the copper wire will be much easier concentrated towards the center. With a wire you work in electron capacity. With the nano layers you work through fields, and it's instantaneous. And this is one of the reasons we will see new effects, because we centralize it. In the coming time, we'll connect all the reactors through pipes. Once we establish the performance which reactor is correct, we will nano coat the pipes internally, and all the feed lines will be nano coated. So we can shift plasma into the center core or increase plasma for rapid lift and the rest of it. The nanotubing is done, and in the institute, when we move hopefully in September, all the pipes will be aluminum nanotube coated. The company who is going to do it, it's a local Italian company. They will do all the circuiting, so we have a permanent plasma connection system on the floor. There is one point which I think we better clarify, because some people have been waiting for this, is in respect to the generator reactor. I had the pleasure to see the structure of what you call it, of this reactor yesterday. I showed the drawings to the knowledge seekers this morning. Italians have done a fantastic job. The core, total height of the core at the moment, because it's for pre-production, we have to test the core, different 2 cores of speed, is about 36.5 centimeter height, and is about 17 centimeter in diameter. It's literally like a food flask, but in the once we do the testing, hopefully in the first couple of weeks of the coming month, because there were some issues with the valves in the system. Yesterday we had a meeting with the professors from the university who are advising, and the engineers and the manufacturers. We think we have found a solution for the valving. That's what's been holding back for a long time. We couldn't find a source. Now the whole reactor will be built in two parts, the reactor parts and the controlling part. And we should be able to have a portable. We estimate the total weight will be around about 1 kilogram, the reactor, but we're going to see how the final condition, maybe 2 kilogram maximum. Then we test for the power output and the rest of the feasibility and the studies of it. So we estimated with the scientists that we should be able to have a working reactor now that we hopefully will resolve the sealing problem in the coming, God knows, 2 or 3 weeks, depending when they do it. But the technology, they have used literally the edge of science materials. The materials I was shown yesterday that I could not imagine exist, but in the high research level it's available to them because they do all sorts of things for the research development. So the people who've been asking about the generator, we will not, release the drawings or the pictures of it, and we have a 3-dimensional pictures of it, the one you can rotate and see every characteristic of it. This is because this is the intellectual, or this is the right of the manufacturer of the Italian company who's developing it. They have put a lot of time and money in doing it in the past couple of months, and it is, I can say, is a beautiful system. It is marvelous what I've seen, and thanks to the Italian scientists, universities, and the engineers who managed to put such a thing together. So we might show the units in public, but they have to make the decision, because now they're looking into the mass production possibilities of making it more efficient. The problem was part of it, the ball bearings. We could at the height to last a long time. There was a problem. At the same time was the conductivity between the two layers, which we could put a bearing. Now they have found a beautiful solution for it. It's a highly newly developed bearings, which has no metallic connection, and it has no connection. It's a very simple but a fantastic system I was shown yesterday. So soon we should be able to have the system here with us for energy testing and initially for coating and assembling. It literally fits like a two-part of engine, the top half and and the core half, and the top half has 8 pieces inside embedded, and the core half is 2 core halves, 2 spheres inside each other. So this is the news I can give you where we are with the generator, but it is absolutely beautiful what they've done, and I hope we get a permission from the manufacturers or the developers to show it in public beforehand in next month or 2, because they are using edge of science simple technologies to guarantee a lifetime work, not a short time testing work. The other point which we are trying to sort out now is that the process for the registration for the Keshe Foundation Institute starts from next week. I've been told by our webmasters, hopefully we purchased 2 further servers to support the institute on its own. So the foundation now has 4 servers in support. There is a 3rd server on the backup if you want to take it over, but this takes programming and the rest to come in. So we have, as the knowledge seekers here cannot do everything. We are more trying to concentrate on the development and research. Is that we start putting an administration structure into the new university. So from next week we have Mary Christine will join us to start the process. That's the administration accepting, and the rest will go out of the hand of the knowledge seekers and in the hand of people who assess who comes and whatever. We've had a problem here in with one of our knowledge seekers, which hopefully is getting resolved, is that if you're a knowledge seeker, do not come into Italy or Europe by, what do you call it, a visitor visa or tourist visa. You need to attain a full educational visa as a student to enter. The company called Spaceship Institute, SRL, is being legally put together. It should be signed in within the next couple of days now that we are stable in Italy. And the Spaceship Institute SRL will be registered, and the procedure has started with the lawyers in respect to registering as a, what do you call it, teaching institute and university. We don't see a problem with that, we've been assured, so we got to see where we're going. So if you want to join us, there is a huge change in the institute. People who we accept as a fee-pay students, they have to adhere to what they agreed. At the same time, for every 2 paid-up students, the foundation will accept 1 non-paid-up student from third world nations. What this means, if I'm correct, is that we are expecting within the first 2 years to reach between 300 to 500 students. The reason we took the accommodation, then the institute with 70, 80 rooms and accommodation, is that the students who come to us from the nations which they have the knowledge and the talent and the insight with the technology, they will be living inside the university, inside the institute, which means they don't need to pay for anything. Their food and their upkeep will be met by the foundation, and the tuition fee will be withdrawn, which means we bring the education equal irrespective of financial position. So nobody can tell us how come somebody else is coming free and I can't. There will be a criteria by the administration will set up that for these 70 places, scientists from even, what do you call it, even Europe. Europe, you might think, is a very rich country, was one of the poorest in so many ways for the scientists. Once we accept a student on this scheme, it means they will join us in the institute, in the new institute building, as a, what do you call it, residing or resident scientist. We'll pay for all their upkeeps, their rooms, and or in a way, because we're buying the property, so it is part of their foundation, what do you call it, it's owned by the foundation. We don't need to pay much to their upkeep, and I have asked the people who look after the catering side, because we are in touch with them, is not going to be a way that just because there are students and they are there as a guest of the foundation and the tuition is paid, they have to live on a meager life. It will not be a table where somebody eats a steak and the other one has to look. If it's a steak, it'll be for everybody on the table the same. So we try to bring the ethos of the foundation into the teaching. The other point is that these scientists will be sent back to their nations to teach on the same basis. And we are structuring month residence, 3 months residence, or 12 months residence. So if you come here, you can register for 1 month, or just under 90 days, which falls with a lot of visa regulations, which you can be here for 85 days, learn as much as you can, and you can go back without needing to extend to a student visa. But you still come in as a researcher, not as a tourist. The whole structure will start kicking into operation within the next few days. I hope, if the webmasters and the team in Tehran can put it together and do it in a good way. We have to accept a number of the free paid students according to the number of paid feed students. Because I've come to this ethos of understanding. When everything is free, there is no respect, and it comes abuse. But the people who pay understand what's their position, and people who get the whole knowledge technology from the foundation have to understand it's been paid by the ones who are here. So in both ways, we don't drop from somewhere. It all comes from within the structure. So it cannot be no abuse. And at the same time, we try to arrange and organize weekly or weekend lecture groups. There is a talk at the moment, Jorge hopefully can sort it out, that we will hold the first 2-week seminar on the medical application of the technology sometime in October. So it means if you're a medical person or connected to health, you can register for this 2 weeks program. The plan is at the moment to the first week to teach or to try to share knowledge about the theoretical and the way we see it and the way it is. And in the second week, we try to build systems with you, the way the knowledge seekers do here. But you build systems, you understand why you build the system, that you can transfer the knowledge of the health section into the world environment for the other scientists and health people to do it. This position is initiated by the doctors in Spain, and Jorge, who speaks Spanish, has been put to be in charge of it. We'll see how many people we can accept on top of the students we have in the in the center, and then we do different seminars according to whatever the topic be. Something else which is part of information, which I'm sure you will see the pictures of it, the agricultural part of the technology. We have put everything together. It starts hopefully, if we didn't have the accident with Marco's reactor, it would have started this Monday, but now sometime next few days we will start the agricultural part. Every knowledge seeker decides what they want to grow, and they have boxes of their own. They grow one part, a similar box with GANS materials, and then with different GANSes and the duration of the dilution, insertion and the dilution of the material for their seeds. So we start seeing the effect of the technology on agriculture and growth of the seeds. Armand wants to grow roots without seeds, and we'll see how he comes. And Marco has already bought his tomato plants, ready to see how they grow a different way. So every knowledge seeker will do their own way. John has agricultural knowledge in the background, so he can tell us more. And the scientific analysis of the end products goes to Jorge, because that's his background. So now we move into the agriculture from this week, on top of the producing the nanomaterials and the rest. And in a way, in a very, very smooth way, we started with production of the nanomaterials, the first batteries, and then the GANs, and now we have the material to go into the agriculture. And very soon we'll use the GANs material for the running of the reactors. It's much easier to run a reactor with a GANs which is already magnetic than trying to ionize a plasma. This is a technology which I've explained to the knowledge seekers, but we are waiting for some position to be cleared. So in fact, you GANs your core, and you put nanomaterial in your core and you fill it up with GANs, so you're already straight away into gravitational magnetic. If you're thinking to do it, don't do it till we tell you, because it's got a lot of dangers with it. As I always say, it's an old Indian say. They say half doctor is more dangerous than a full doctor, because he doesn't know what he's doing with the other half. So the process will go into the development, and then you will see the universal lift system. The universal lift system does not use plasma, uses a mixture of GANSes and the plasma, and in a way you see it's more effective. You can carry much larger structures independent of the shape, but at the same time you can speed up to several thousands and millions of times the speed of the light, which you are used to at the moment, because now you link with a universal magnetic field through the plasma of the GANs. This is unknown technology to man, and we open it in time, but we have already started the structure to do so. Is there any questions?
Yes, I think Elia had a question. I'm just waiting for her to get to the mic.
Hello, Mr. Keshe. It's me, Elia. Can you hear me?
Elia, good morning. Oh, yes.
Yeah, morning.
Yes, how are you?
So I have a question, and that question is not only mine. People want to describe to them about the producing of food, how you produce different kind of people.
Can you repeat the question?
Want to know about the food, different kind of food, what you produce, like a fat from plants and animals origin, and like a protein and carbohydrate. And they want to know, did you test them in some laboratory, and what actually they are consist inside? This is also a question from the live stream.
I don't understand the question. Somebody tell me. Just wait one second. Ivan is trying to explain.
Okay, the question is how you make the food in nano state. Because you described you made the food like a fat, like a protein and carbohydrate.
Oh, you mean in the cubicle in the lab?
Yeah, in the lab. So they want to know how you made it, what actually have inside, like a GAN state of which one gases, and did you make some tests of that food?
The test we have given the material out to be tested. We have given out some of the fat to be tested, and we're going to start the testing of the fats and their effect in the coming weeks, and God knows as we go on. There is a need for. We have a problem here, or we don't have a problem. It's just because we started it. Is that in the new institute will resolve this? It's been set up to do. At the moment, we have to rely on other organization, governmental, university, or whatever, to do different evaluation testing and the rest for us. So in the institute, we have a special room. We are already been allocating it for that. The institute will buy most of these systems, right? Raman spectroscopy system machines and the infrared, that we can analyze these directly internally, immediately. So for the time being, we can't tell you what the position is regarding about which fat, but once we open the institute, hopefully we get scientists from around the world who know how to use these as well, and we will be able to instantaneously, within hours or days, respond to this question. But at the moment, the structure which you have in the lab is being made accidentally, but in a way, in a good way. We have created a structure like a fiber, like a plant in the first reactor. We see protein, but in a different structure on the top. That was the original drinking bottles which we started. Then the second one, which is a twisted, it's very much the third one, which is I built, is an accordion shape. One replicates the flesh of the body of animals, and one is the flesh of like a fish. Arman has set up a totally new condition environment, but a collection of it in the system he's built, like concentric, and non-concentric. And these all coming up, we'll get it analyzed and we can tell you about what fat is what. But don't forget, the fat you produce, it is very much dependent on the salt you use, on the material, which is the environment, and at the same time, the material which you use for nano-coating. In the fat which comes from the square boxes, which is about 50-60 of them, it looks fat from the top, and you see copper oxide at the bottom. But when you collect the fat from the top layer, you find residue of copper oxide in it. It's green. Even though the fat is generated on you think is generated on the top layer, the fat comes from inner structure of the liquid. So as the fat is coming up from the bottom, releasing the oxygen or the gas, it attracts, because of its gravitational field, the molecules or atoms of the copper oxide and copper itself. So this is very much, as you know, you're a doctor, that the communication in the neural system of the muscles comes through copper, not through the nerve system. So this has shown me a lot of insight into this structure, and we have started using it on the health side, and it seems to be correct in the assumption that the conductivity through the muscle tissue comes through copper and not neural, because you don't have nerve in every cell, but through the GANs of copper, which is embedded within the protein. You have this, what I call non-communicational direct info energy magnetic field transfer, which automatically gets to the nerve, and then it becomes, you feel the pain in your muscle, in your tissue, or if something goes inside it or you get hurt. So we can explain the whole process, how it's done because of the GANs condition. So you see that in 3 houses of the almond unit, you see only gases are produced with the fat. And this is a paper is going to get published called Oil, Gas and Protein. Hopefully it should be released by Monday on the Keshe Foundation website through the normal site. And partially this has been explained. And then you decide if you are short of copper in the future, how you can use this protein instead of just going and buying copper tablets or tablets which contain copper. Now you have the possibility to buy copper in a structure which is your body is made of. You buy ganses, or you acquire ganses, fats with the ganses of copper inside it, which is automatically can reach the body, or you can even rub it on the point of where it's needed, the shortage be. But this is to be evaluated in long term by the scientists around the world and through different organizations of the foundation. Any other question?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, Mr. Keshe, this is Lucian. Good morning. Because you are at this point, I would like to continue on this GANs production. I did
Lucian, why don't you join us in the knowledge seekers?
Well, I think I will be next year in Europe, so probably we can meet in Italy. So.
No. We don't want a meeting. Come in, because then we can keep. They say you keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. We would like you here because you ask very detailed questions as a package. So I've got to keep an eye on you.
Thank you.
You're not a friend, but you're the spokesman. Okay, on fire.
Yes. So basically, I was able to replicate the experiment that the knowledge seekers are doing with the salt solution containers. So basically, I have only one container, copper and zinc electrodes. Initially, I had some sort of oily thing on the top. As a matter of fact, I think that is zinc GANs, because it's not oil. And on the bottom, it's like a bluish powder, which gives some sort of blue color to the water, which, based on what you are saying, probably is CH4 in the GANs state. So building to what you explained to Elia and what we discussed into the previous workshops, after the cell started about 970 millivolts and it's dropping with about 100 millivolts a day. So today is about 740. And the iron electrode lost almost all its zinc. So on the bottom of the tank, of the plastic water bottle, there are like two moons, a bigger moon, which is darkish, probably that is the zinc, and some sort of bluish thing, which is the CH4. So probably now it is only iron on the. It was, as a matter of fact, a wire from a champagne bottle. So this point, yes, good champagne. So now coming back to what you did start about 2 workshops ago, when you start to explain bridging between containers, but you went to other directions. So basically what you try to explain there is that when you have the big box with just separators between the compartments, you have a certain plasmatic condition. When you have distinct bottles, what the knowledge seeker did, they were cutting water bottle and just bridging them, you have a different condition. So also what they did not explain is you guys arranged that cut bottles like in a square tray. I am doing them in a linear, like a string. So basically, could you give us some hints what kind of consequences will have if these gravitational magnetic fields are acting linearly, as I'm doing, like in a string way? And if the electrodes are, how to say, facing to each other or perpendicular, as you did in your big box, how to say, this kind of different kind of fields, how will influence the material? When I'm saying material, it could be oily thing, protein, or whatever it is going to be obtained.
I think I went shopping 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Marco has this square and the long containers, the linear shape. We don't see any changes, any difference. The electrodes are long pulled and in the side pockets of the system. What changes have you seen?
So you are suggesting that
Lucia, let Marco answer you, because we already done this. Or it's just 1 second.
There are also some pictures on Facebook of another system that we are running with nanomaterial or GANs absorption, and it has different small containers in it. One of them are very small, one of them are elongated, different sizes, and also electrodes. One of them are very compacted, and one of them are elongated. And what I've seen, the in elongated shape of the cells, on one side there is more concentrated material than on the other side. On one side, the liquid salt liquid is more clear than on the other side. You got different composition, different material
Like
gets
different densities?
Yes, different densities, let's say. And also in Arman's setup, there is a similar thing. You have different densities in the middle than on the outer edges. So it has impacts, but well, you have to try it and observe it. What do you get? And out of these different conditions, you can get conclusions. What did you get? First,
right, and after you lose the nanocoat.
You never lose the nanocoat.
You don't see it, but it's still there, very, very thin layers. You don't see it with your eye, but there is still there. These nano layers are still there. There are very few layers.
I don't know. Based on my own experiment, it looks like the iron wire that was zinc coated lost almost all its zinc coating. Looks like a bare steel, I mean carbon steel. I may be wrong because I don't have optical means, but this is how it's looking on the visual inspection.
Yeah, then you go to your steel. Then you go to iron. You create the same.
In our cells, you can also see this iron or steel coated with zinc. And some of them were nano-coated, some of them were not nano-coated. And so we have one electrode, let's say copper nano-coated, and one zinc which is coating the iron or steel inside. And we see in this production of gas and white stuff. So and when the zinc layer is broken during the process by interaction with the salt environment and in the cell, you start to see also different deposits at the bottom, which are brown or orange. So there's certainly you get different results after you consume or the zinc layer on the electrode.
Right, so I'm assuming that after the testing phase, the goal will be like a continuous production of oily thing or fatty thing on the top of the liquid. So in order to maintain the same gravitational magnetic field condition, how you guys are planning to, how to say, I wouldn't say to refill the electrodes, but to keep the condition. Just replacing the electrodes, because if you do so, the new nano-coated electrodes will have different gravitational magnetic fields packed. Probably you are going to get other material, not what you are intending to. And I'm asking this because I want to couple this with Elias' questions and with the health, probably the next coming health seminar. So if a guy is sick and he needs, specific doses or gravitational magnetic field package, and you do it once and the guy is coming after 3 months with a doctor to see you, you have to give it the same, doses. So I'm just trying to think how it can be controlled to give it the same. In other words, for not changing the electrodes and changing the conditions. Any ideas on this?
Yes, we see in these cells that these electrodes are consumed. in some way, because the surface changes. But if you use, as Mr. K says, just pure, let's say, zinc electrode, not iron coated with zinc, then you will have more equal conditions during the process.
We see that in your boxes. What is nanocopper coated and what is a copper? And the only thing we've been extracting is pure copper.
Yes, as you can see on
can you ask Mr. Kesh to come near to the microphone, because he doesn't, we cannot hear him.
Yeah, what happened if you look at the sorry, I've got a very bad cold for the past couple of weeks. It's not going away. The point is, as Marek was saying, in the cubicle samples, which we have about 50, 60 in the tray, we haven't used any other material. It's a nano-coated copper and a copper wire. So we only have, yeah, but there is nothing outside but copper and one nano-coated and one nano-coated, and we are only collecting copper material from it. So if you want purity, you can decide how you mix and what kind of mixture of material you're coating. We see this with Arman. What Arman did, he took copper mesh, he took copper tube, he took zinc-coated material, whatever he had, he took and mixed zinc-coated and there's plain zinc as well. And what he did, he assembled all these together, he soldered them all together, and then he put the whole lot into coating. Even the wires which connect the different pieces are coated with nano coating. And we see a very interesting pattern in the way the material are produced in his machine. In what I call it, it's a machine, it's a live system. In a way, but if you look, these are machines, food machines. They are the cows which don't walk. So they give you milk and they give you meat. It's a protein. And they're laughing their head off here. The interesting thing is, we know the whole structure in these boxes are gravitational magnetic field connected. We will release the pictures, hopefully, or you've seen most of the pictures. From the first couple of days, for example, in the unit which Arman has built, the 3 cells on the right-hand side have stayed producing only and stayed totally clear. And they only produce CO2 cans. And the rest of the other 21 boxes creating all different materials. And they never changed. So it was accidental. Even those 3 by now should have gone through rust or been different material. If you look at the box, which is the way I built the two boxes for production of the protein as a material to eat, you see the same condition have stayed with all the boxes. The ones which have been clear from the beginning, that are still clear. So it's got nothing to do with rusting. If you had 2 brown, 1 clear and 1 brown, has been the same from the beginning. If you had 3 and 2 and 1, it's still the same. So is the gravitational magnetic field, even though it's so weak, you think, between the nano coating and the material in the salt, it dictates the whole composition of the box. So this is something which, as I say, you're too focused at one thing. Look at the bigger structure. And we made a note of this in the paper to be published next week with the oil, gas, and protein. Marco will show pictures of the boxes. So in the same box, you see different type of protein according to the gravitational. Even though they are the same material, the same salt, the same thing, you see different gravitational magnetic field which allows production of different kind of protein in the same situation. So in one box you collect one thing, and in the box next door you collect a different thing, but the pattern is exactly the same, 2, 1, 1. Nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. And the oxygen, where is the CO2? We know the CO2 characteristic is where the oxygen is centralized, because oxygen is the gravitational system in the protein. It's what holds the whole entity together. And nitrogen is the igniter. Hydrogen, because of its condition, is the energy releaser. And carbon is the communication line between the next step to the next cell. So this will be investigated and done, and then in the future in the institute you do the measuring of what is what and how, and what coating needs. How can you mix different coating? I think you'll find out in the long run. In some cases, depending on your nanoelectrode coated and coated material like the iron, zinc, copper, what they're coating, if the gravitational magnetic field on the zinc interface with iron can be maintained, you will start producing ganses of iron. If it's not maintained, you'll find you reach stagnation. This is very, very clear. So, in fact, your nano layers, as I always say, is produced from the surface of the material, not from the top. So, if the gravitational magnetic field is not strong enough to start creating this association of the molecule to atom as a GaNs, as a nano, that it converts in a solution to a GaNs, you'll find out you reach zero. This is one of the reasons you're most probably reducing in energy. It means your interface has not been strong enough to allow the separation of the zinc, because this should not be a chemical reaction. This is a plasma reaction, electromagnetic field reaction. And if it was a chemical reaction, then it has to go to the metal. You carry on with the same oxidization or plate system. In a battery, when you release the zinc from one plate, is attracted to others. You don't find any residue at the bottom of the battery. But with this GaNs and nano layering, that's why you find the residue at the bottom, because it's not a chemical reaction, it's magnetic gravitational field interaction. And if it's not strong enough, you will not be able to deassociate the steel and have a GaNs of steel. And then this affects your process in your system for production of food and what content will be in the protein. Next question.
Hello, Mr. Keshe. This is Vitor here.
Yes, thank you. I have just a very short question. When I solder these electrodes,
Are you listening?
Can I go on?
Yeah. Let's finish with you. At least we can answer.
Yeah,
all
the
your
stanium will. Okay, sorry, it's a delay.
Go ahead.
2 seconds. The last. Yeah, it's very quick. When I'm soldering, let's say, the zinc and the copper to put it as a whole into the coating tank, the stanium will be coated as well with the black nanopowder, or will it stay clear?
I mean, as if it's... I don't use soldering anymore. It's easier to just connect your wires. Just twist it around it. Get away with this soldering. It doesn't make any difference, and you find out if you just twist your material together, you find a natural process. Because I've seen it with almonds, where he's used the solder, there is no coating, and it's copper. You see it. And the question you ask, I have no. You most probably convert it. All materials in the Earth atmospheric condition, more or less, if you create the right heat to be able to disassociate the top layer initially of the material, you can produce GaNs off and nanomaterial off. If you, example, get gold and you can't nano coat it, it means you haven't created the high temperature enough to start the disassociation. Because once that disassociation from a molecule to atomic happens that the outer layers are loose, your process of nanotechnology. That's why you can make, that's we shown before, you can even allow silver and gold to become nano-coated. There is something which I explained yesterday to the knowledge seekers. In respect to science, if you can understand it, maybe it explains something in another dimension. When you make a popcorn or when you make a Rice Krispies, you put the corn in the pan with some oil, and when it reaches the right temperature, the corn pops and you get the white stuff. But you still get the seed, the center in the corn, which is the hard bit at the end when you chew. The same thing with the Rice Krispies. This process is actually part of very much like conversion. And the same process happens, as I explained yesterday or the day before to the knowledge seekers, is when the atomic carbon goes through the volcanic eruption, we don't find diamond inside the molten, what do you call it, metal, lava. We find when the pressure and the energy given to the carbon in getting blown out of the volcanic eruption or within the process of even the top layer, the carbon receives enough energy that it pops, it becomes like a popcorn. Diamond is a carbon popcorn, but in a way it solidifies. And then what you do, as you find the hard core in the popcorn, you see the black spot, the mother where the pop has been done. And then in the diamond business, we drill it out, the black spot. But that black spot, what we call the mother, is a residue which did not, is the original seed which did not open up. So you can make, if you know how to push your process further, you can just buy carbons, atomic carbon, and just pop up diamonds as you like. This is the same process. In the same process happens in your body. If the gravitational magnetic field energy which comes from your brain is strong enough, it pops the carbon into a diamond, become insulator. You call it myelin. And if the energy is there to extract it, the same cell comes back to graphite, becomes conductor. The process is the same. So in your cups, if you want to produce somebody with a neuro damage or a myelin damage, you can, if you understand the process, you can initiate it with the information of that characteristics within the oil which gets absorbed in the body. So the future health technology in the space is not based on attacking, but based on what information is needed by the cell or by the entity. And you can use the same knowledge. Yes.
I have a friend with a cerebral tumor in a serious trouble. What advice do you have if you can have?
I'm not a doctor. I don't advise.
No, in this.
This is one of the things. This is. Yeah, from the technology point of view, we look at it, what it is, and if it can teach us something. And this is one of the. I don't advise you. I am not a doctor, but we look at the structure, how the structure was built, how the cancer came to be there, how it's solidified to become a cancer cell, and what is short or high. When you get to a cell as a matter state, which is like a tumor, it means you look at your reactors. Energy level has reduced enough that they become into a matter state. Look in the structure of the body. Where is the energy disposed of? Where is the energy for keeping different part of the, what do you call it, body matters in different states? It all comes from thymus, and the thymus has a direct effect and through your lymph nodes. That's why your blood is liquid and your bones are hard. And that's why your muscle tissues have different thickness. This is all dictated totally by thymus. And when there is a shortage in conversion, you have your parathyroid glands which come into operation to support, to replace the energy specific behavior. So if you look at the structure of your body, in the physical side, you have your forehead which observe what you need. You have your thyroid glands, which says what it needs, what comes in to be converted to, and you have your thymus slightly further down to control in what states want to keep this material. So the body is a control room, but now we understand the operation, so we can interact with the body through its own working, what we call the plasma technology. This is what they said, oh, he only uses magnets, he's a crook. It means, oh, boys, you never understood a thing about creation. So you have to understand how the system is positioned. It's the same as I said with the cups. Why one cup always stays white and never changes, and we still see the same process. You have to understand the interaction. This is what I was trying to teach John. John is much closer to the energy within his body. But I was explaining to him in the past couple of days, and now that we are going further, I try to enhance in what the knowledge seekers are more close to, they enjoy to do, to enhance their knowledge in that field. So there'll be more individual short teaching. And I gave him 2 magnets in his hand, and I said to him, feel it. Because we are physically tangible, when we feel the magnets, we think we got a magnet in our hand. But we can hold the magnets apart and you still know you have a magnet, and the fields have the same effect. It's us being too much materialistic. So with a tumor, with a cancer, with blood cancer, it's all the same. You got to understand what is and where and how the fields are respect to each other interact.
So
then you can just out of nowhere you can say, oh, I had a cancer and it disappeared.
So the glands are like the cells in the
you have to understand a lot of cancer has emotional background, and the emotion comes through the magnetic field. Emotions are magnetic field gravitational orientated, and they are entity. They are not just a feeling, they are fields. And then you have to understand what field has landed somewhere that has changed itself into matter, and what reason. And how the body has decided to put it there. We'll start teaching the medical side in much depth, or what I call the health side. I'm not a doctor, but then the doctors will teach the process to the other doctors. Now we have a good core of medical people around the world who are ready to push this to the next level. The numbers runs into a few thousand. Now they've been trying to be in touch with the center for a long time. Now that we open the institute, we bring all the health section into one. And then as medical people, they can run with this once they understand the working. And this will be a field day for the pharmaceuticals. The development of new type of materials which can be used for improving conditions. But in the space, you build these yourself as you need it. We started the mapping of the magnetic gravitational field of the what do you call it, the lab, now that we have more, because we have interactions. Soon we'll start doing the same thing with the materials within the lab. Raman spectroscopy becomes meaningless when you can do a 3-dimensional field detection, and then you understand exactly what is in your hand. Recently a test has been done and they say, oh, we see only calcium CO3. But in fact, boys, you had the gans in your hand, but because you were what we call Raman spectroscopy, this shows its characteristics. But if you would in infrared spectroscopy, then you see the composition of the material will show. It'll show itself in Raman as a CaCO3, but when you put it in an infrared spectroscopy in another system, you'll find it shows the property of the superconductors, which is very abnormal, but it's a natural process of the GANs and the nano layers, because the interaction with them is not in a matter level, electron level, but it's in a magnetic field flow. Next question.
Thank you, Mr. Keshe.
Hello, Mr. Keshe. I have a question for you regarding biology also. The mind can release some fields, and it causes the cells of the body to release ultraviolet on several different wavelengths. Can you tell us more about that?
Repeat.
The mind, you can release energies with the mind, and it causes the cells, certain cells within the body, to release ultraviolet light.
You can release with your mind energies that your face looks white, not only ultraviolet. I seen even the pictures. People, their face looks white. They can take a picture of themselves, but it's the way they concentrate their energy. In the very near future, as very much like you will teach you in how to do it. It's very dangerous at the moment because, as I said, the people don't understand what they're doing. You can concentrate your energies that you literally need no torch in front of you. You can create a field ahead of you like a torch. It's a very natural process in the universe. People don't carry torch with them the same as nobody carries a motor in the universe. But if you know how to concentrate the fields as a package of gravitational magnetic fields, you can enlighten your path. It's a very, very simple system, and it uses very, very little energy. So it's not only ultraviolet, but you can release fields which can interact with your environment. Doesn't matter if you're on the Earth, atmospheric condition, or anywhere else. Because you know how to control it, you can create light ahead of you to see. If you are a visually dependent animal like human. I'll try to get a picture from this guy who can create light in his face. When you take a picture from him, you see totally white light, like a fluorescent. And he can take pictures from different angles with him. I met him, he's an Italian scientist. He wanted to know how he can do it, and I was explaining to him. He's in, I think he's going somewhere. He'll be back here next few months. Most probably we'll see him. And then, or maybe if he listens to the workshop, he can post his picture on the internet or send it to us. We post it up. Next question. It's nearly 3.5 hours as usual.
Yeah,
we try to bring it to an end.
I was going to say, I think it's probably time to wrap things up here. It's definitely been over 3 hours. So, wow, once again.
We try? Let me wind up in one way and then we say goodbye from here.
Right.
Two things is that we start, hopefully Marek will try to put the lab situation on the net that you can see what we need because of what we saw happen over Sunday with Marco's reactor. We need to go live and we need to run like a 24-hour vigilance system. Somebody around the world can watch what's happening. If there is anything we can see, we shouldn't lose a reactor by accident at this stage of technology. Somebody could have been warned that we could be in there before the damage goes any further. So we are looking for people to, once we have a internet problem here that we can get it resolved hopefully very soon. We need a 24-hour vigilance around the world by scientists. Very much like the first WW, huh? Watch the, what do you call it? Watch the coffee machine. When there is nobody there to queue up, that's how we got to WW. We need that process worldwide for scientists to watch, to observe, and at the same time as you learn and inform us if anything happens. Secondly is we appeal for financial support to be able to put the the Foundation Institute as an entity by September. We need just several million euros to put it together, and this is a physical purchase, is not a place that we can walk into. So we need the facilities is something like 40,000 square meters in one of the prime positions, but he has all the facilities we need. So somehow somebody somewhere has to be able to, as a group or as a mass, to be able to pay for such a process. We support it as much as we can, but this should not be part of the foundation problem. Now we transfer the knowledge. If anyone around the world who's downloaded the USB key contributes €1 to the foundation will pass $150 million. Now you know how many times this the patent has been, the key has been downloaded. If the knowledge in that key worth €1 for you that you downloaded it, you pay €1, the foundation will have enough to support itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We bring it to a wrap.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much, Mr. Keshe, and everybody there at the Spaceship Institute. Once again, this is the end of the 10th Knowledge Seekers Workshop. And will we continue again next week, do you think? Or leave that decision until later?
No, we never stop. We'll be there next week and the week after.
Right on.
We are talking, we are looking at a 4-week session holidays in August at the moment. But I don't think will be much effective because we have to go through the opening of the institute in September. So maybe we carry on through the holidays too.
Right.
Thank you very much for your support. Thank you very much for people around the world who support the foundation the way they do. But don't expect miracles from us because we have to understand, and you have to understand that you cannot teach everybody at the same time.
Yes, and it's all step by step too. You can't go too fast in this business. It seems like it has to go as things unfold.
Otherwise, we become a magician.
Right. Well, you're pretty close to that.
Thanks for your hard work, Rick. Thank you very much indeed.
All right. Thanks to everybody.
Bye.
It's a wrap.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.